Well, let's get straight into it. We've had the news this week that I think everyone was expecting, that W Series was cutting its season short. Presumably, Abbie, this wasn't a huge surprise to you.
No, so we were kind of all given a heads up at Singapore that it was actually basically an article had been written about W Series being in financial troubles. So Catherine kind of called a bit of a team meeting and just basically was super honest with us all and just said, look, this is the situation that we're in. We're currently trying to find the budget to be able to make the next two races. We're working hard as they, I will, highlight that they do all work extremely hard to make it work. And motorsport is a ridiculously expensive sport, and just to get the cars racing is a lot of money. So they have our best interests at heart. And we basically said, well, look, whatever happens, we're all on board with you, but let's keep our fingers crossed that in a weird way this article going out might actually have a little silver lining and get us to the next two races.
Yeah. Have you spoken much since then to Catherine? And I know a lot of the drivers are quite close. Presumably you've chatted amongst yourselves as well.
Yeah, so mainly the kind of British drivers, I guess, all chat to each other quite a lot. But the feeling within the group was, for me personally, and probably a few of the older ones, this is kind of like, we've been through this before. I've had 20 years of racing where, I've had many seasons where I've sat out. So, we wanted to just kind of convey to Catherine that, this isn't new. It is a common thing in motorsport to run out of money, mid-season, or, maybe start the season reliant on other investors or whatever coming in. So, we just wanted to make sure that she didn't feel kind of alone, and the rest of the team as well. It's not just Catherine, but and we were appreciative of what they'd done and the kind of work that they put in. So, there are going to be other drivers, probably some of the younger drivers that maybe haven't had or gone through this situation where, you kind of have to prop them up a little bit and say, don't worry. And actually the long-term kind of future of W Series is looking really good. So, it's not all doom and gloom, but, not an ideal way to finish the season.
Well, let's look at the bright side. Obviously, there's been loads of press reports about it, but there have been reports that, originally the contractual funds, that there was some investment that didn't come through. That's been widely publicised. But it sounds like from little tidbits that Catherine has said and other bits in the press that there is positive investment talks going on. So although they've curtailed the season this year, what's the general feeling within the group about the future of it? Is it going to come back?
I think so. It's looking positive, and as I mentioned, kind of, when a door shuts, another one opens, and they've kind of, I suppose, had to take the hard route at the end of this year for the kind of long-term goals of W Series, which is obviously to race again next year and into the future. So there has been a lot of positive conversations. As soon as that actually article went out in Singapore, there's been huge interest, which, too right. So there should be, I'll just remind people that Silverstone was the most watched motorsport event outside of F1 in the UK since 2014. So, the momentum that W Series has got, and, the fan base as well, and the support that we all get, there's no way that it should have ended in this way. And I think that just proves, with the support we've had since the news has come out, that it is looking positive, and there isn't a kind of doom and gloom kind of atmosphere at the series. It's more, right, it's always been hard finding money over the last 3 or 4 years. Now's the time to dig even deeper and move on to the next level. And I suppose one thing we do forget is that W Series is a startup company, and in its second year COVID hit. So there's probably not many businesses that would have been able to continue in the way that it has done the last couple of years. So I think this is just part and parcel of a new business, and probably many businesses in motorsport as well.
Yeah, it's good to have that dose of realism, because the immediate reaction is that you see the news, you go on Twitter, and it's like the whole world's caving in. When it's the end of W Series, we're never going to see it ever again. I suppose one of the challenges they're going to have, though, is that certain drivers aren't going to wait around to see what happens. What are people going to do? Do you think people are just going to go off and have to find other race seats for either the rest of this year or next year? Or do you think some people will be like, right, well, I'll just I'll just chill for a bit, hang fire, see what happens, and hopefully just pick things back up again next year?
I think there's a real mixture of drivers in the championship that are in different positions. So there are quite a lot of drivers that don't actually need W Series in terms of they've got a decent budget to go and race other stuff. And there are others that without W Series wouldn't be racing at all. So, I think the ones that have got the budget and the means to go elsewhere, maybe in terms of their kind of security, I think they maybe will look elsewhere. And W Series probably, realise that. We're extremely, or some of us are extremely reliant on the championship. And if they can't kind of, commit the same back through, no fault of their own, then, people are going to look elsewhere. But I think that there is a big core group of girls that will be hoping that W Series comes back and, have got their eyes set on doing the championship for next year and so on. So, but I do think there will be some drivers that don't come back.
Yeah. I mean, presumably Jamie will be one of them, because they've given her the title despite finishing early. She is the champion, so 3-time champion, which is amazing. But presumably she'll now, well, I think she's going to get paid the full whack for winning the championship again. So presumably she's got a decent budget together now. I assume that we wouldn't see her again next year. Would you go along with that?
I think so. And, I think Jamie gets a lot of stick from the public and even people within motorsport that she's, come back 3 times. But, what championship can you race in where you get a £500,000 paycheck? Like,
yeah,
or $500,000, you'd be stupid to turn it down. And, ultimately we are here to, yes, make a career, but we also need to make a living and pay bills and earn money. So, the fact that the opportunity was there for her to do that, like, she'd be stupid not to. Maybe you can say that's a bit of a failing of the championship to allow her back in to do that. But, ultimately these are the things that, W Series will probably end up looking at and saying, right, okay, we need to change that, if we want to try and, springboard drivers onto the next level. But, I think they're actually looking at themselves as a championship and their kind of position in motorsport as, to start off with, they viewed themselves as a feeder series. So this is where you'd come in, learn, and then you'd go back out into the wild. But I think they've kind of changed their kind of mindset a little bit and they want it to almost be a destination to get to. So, I think that the cars they're hoping to improve, quicker, almost up to kind of, F2.5, almost that kind of level. And I think, whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, I think probably depending on who you ask, they'll say different. But I think the amount of kind of momentum and status that W Series has got already, I think that actually it's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah. There is a lot of prize money in it. The winner, Jamie, gets $500,000, something like that. And then there's a pot that goes amongst the other drivers from there. Could that be, though, some of the failings? Because when you look at it from an outsider's perspective, as I do, you look at the prize money, which, as you say, is amazing. What a draw. But then you look at that and then you look at the sponsorship, which it doesn't, I don't know, maybe there is, doesn't look like there's a huge amount of sponsorship money floating around within it. There's probably some TV money and so on. But do you think there's a fundamental issue with the financial model that perhaps needs changing and we'll see a slightly different setup to the series next year if it does return?
Not with regards to the prize money. Yes, it's a fantastic opportunity, but it's a huge commitment for drivers to do that, with no money. If anything, I would maybe argue that the prize fund should be split between everyone and everyone gets a wage, because, it's okay for the 16, 17-year-olds that still live at home, but for people like myself that are 30 and have got bills to pay, we need money coming in. And, you basically have a full year where, you take weeks off, sometimes 2 weeks at a time because you're racing and you don't get the money until December. So, that's the part that's difficult. And, the grand scheme of things, $1.5 million is sod all in the, for the actual costs involved to run the championship.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And do you think, as a series, you mentioned earlier, it's sort of had to change tack slightly from a feeder series into a destination. Do you think W Series and Catherine can look back and think, regardless of what happens in the future, we've done what we set out to do. We've got more females in the sport. We've raised awareness. Do you think they can be happy with what they've delivered so far?
100%. Like, you can see it down to grassroots already. There are so many more females coming into the sport, and be it drivers wanting to do marshalling or engineering, all that kind of stuff. And I've never had so many young girls come up to me when we're at shows or whatever, and say, I've been watching you and I'd love to get into motorsport. And I think it's nice actually that you'll have like a dad and daughter relationship, and the dad's really into F1, and then W Series has come on, and then the daughter's like, they're all girls, and it's a really random kind of interest into it that you wouldn't have had before. And I think that's really lovely. And again, people will argue and say maybe it's not the right thing to have done, but you cannot argue with the fact that W Series is, I think, since 2019, I think it's like over 30 girls that they've actually given seasons of racing to for free. And that's more than a lot of other people have done. And one thing that I think maybe is a little bit disappointing about this situation here is there are a lot of figureheads that talk about how equality and inclusivity and diversity and females in motorsport and blah blah blah, and actually this is a really, really good opportunity for them to actually make their words into actions, and at least get us to the end of the season. And lo and behold, no one has come out of the woodwork from that regard. And really the money that is needed is nothing. It's a drop in the ocean in relation to the money that they've got in the bank, which each of their own, I suppose. But it is just disappointing that you think these people that are talking, is it all just to be part of that bandwagon and to beat that drum? But actually when it comes to it, where are they now? And that's the disappointing part. But we're going to bounce back. I'm positive of that. And it's just another year in motorsport.
It is, and the way you look at it is admirable and very sensible. And like you say, you've been here before. To you, that it's just another year of scrambling around, finding the right seat and keeping the money coming in. It's interesting the different views on it. We had Sophia Florish on the show not ages ago, 6 months ago, something like that. And we were talking about W Series, and her view is she's in the camp of, well, it's segregation. It's separating the girls and the boys. We should be competing against the boys. Why should we have to, have it easy? What do you say to those kind of arguments that especially from other females who don't see the value in it? Do you think there's any justification for those kind of comments, or do you completely disagree?
Those that have those opinions tend to have a massive bank account and can go and race whatever they want. If you ask any girl in W Series if they would rather be racing in a segregated series or racing with the guys, we would all say with the guys. But the reality is that this is an opportunity that we've got racing paid for, and without that racing, I wouldn't be racing.
Yeah.
And I would love to sit down and just have a proper chat with Sophia, because she's very vocal about how against W Series she is, which again, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but actually the reality is she's never had to worry about money, and she's never had to worry about finding a drive, because she's got the financial backing behind her to do what she wants, which is great. I wish we were all in that same position, and then actually W Series probably wouldn't need to exist, because we'd all be able to do the racing that we want to do. But yeah, that could maybe be another podcast.
Yeah. Oh God, that'd be a good one. Can you imagine?
We need to get Alice on, because Alice and Sophia always clash on.
Do they?
Twitter. Oh, so it's great.
We could, maybe you could be the ref, and we could have Alice versus Sophia, and just let them go. Just tee them up with a difficult question, and just let them go at it.
Amazing.
That would fly. No, it is interesting, and it's hugely sad. And touch wood, people will find new opportunities, or it'll come back next year, all guns blazing, and people will get their race seats. For you personally, what's the next step? Are you going to sit and wait and see what happens with W Series, or presumably you've got to explore other avenues?
Yeah, I've always got the feelers out. It's no secret that kind of single seaters is not really where I wanted to go, the route that I wanted to go down. It's always been kind of GTs and touring car type stuff for myself. And since the accident, it takes quite a lot to physically to drive these single seaters. They are extremely tough to drive, and actually, people that say, and I think it was Alice was jumping into another car, and this guy was like, the steering's really heavy, like, you'll have to just take your time. And Alice is like, this is really light in comparison to, like, what we drive. So I definitely am looking at alternative championships to race in. It's not as a driver, you don't want to be in kind of the top 10. You want to be in the top 3 at least. So for me, the only thing that's holding me back is the amount of pain that I'm in. So I'll be looking for
You're
some
still in
other
pain. You're still feeling the effects.
It's any moment driving that car is not ideal. Again, it is what it is, but I want to be looking elsewhere where I can actually drive the car how I want to drive it and how it should be driven, and not curse all the way around the track. Stay tuned.
Yeah, well, touch wood. Hopefully you find something soon. Let us know your plans when you've got them. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on to have a chat about it. I think there's a lot of people that'd be really interested to hear your views. It sounds like, sort of reading between the lines, that the W Series is still in a positive place. Despite the sort of, not the shock news, but the news that it can't finish the season, touch wood, that means that next year it can come back all guns blazing, and hopefully we'll see you there, if not somewhere else in a paddock. But really appreciate it. Abbie, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot.